Good morning, everyone. Welcome to what should be a fantastic panel talking about the upstream and really developing upstream in the low carbon world. I have a very esteemed panel with me. I don't need to go through everyone's introductions. You can see the names up on stage, but you can also realize that we've got a fantastic mix of both very, very high profile production and companies from India, but also from abroad, because this is genuinely going to be a panel that discusses the global picture, which is kind of forming right now. And just speaking with the panelists earlier, I think it's kind of just framing the conversation is very, very important. Over the last 2 decades, or at least a decade and a half, we have been really at the mercy of US production growth. We've seen enormous production of over like 1.5, 2 million barrels per day year on year, easily pretty much each year. And it has been a shale story. But that is starting to change. We are running out of tier 1 acreage, shale's getting gassier, you're getting more liquids now. So it's really about the next frontier. And you have Brazil, you have Guyana, little bit of Canada. That's going to really be the next growth story, but also potentially a shift away from onshore to offshore production. And I think that's the big shift that lies ahead. We've also been through a decade and a half where exploration really hasn't picked up, which has massive implications for just like decline rates, arresting those decline rates, and what it does mean for future production. We all know the move is towards a lower carbon footprint, but how do we take the oil and gas industry along with that and not just kind of leave it behind, right? So that's some of the big topics that we are going to discuss. I think, Mr. Gupta, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. Obviously, you head up ONGC Videsh, and I think the critical thing is, of course, India is doing really, really well now with exploration and production, but we also need to look abroad when it comes to India's energy needs, because in order to meet the growing demand that we have in this country, and in terms of energy security, really, I mean, you've increased capex by I think 20% in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. Where is that coming from? Is it just an India story? You're looking abroad as well.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me here. Great to be a part of this esteemed panel and with partners from all over the world. A very good question, Amrita. I would say that yes, ONGC has increased its capex by 20% last year. This year also we plan to be in that range. And in international, we are today in 19 countries. We have 32 projects. We are about 10.5 million ton of production per year, but we want to do more. And the reason is very clear that everybody knows that we import about 85 to 88% of our oil, about 50% of our gas. We have 17–18% of the world's population. We have a growing economy, one of the largest growing economy at about 7%. So it has to feed on energy. But there is a shift also. The shift is that in India we wanted to bring up our commissioning of our 98/2 deep water project. So now ONGC is a capable deep water operator. We had shallow water, we had onshore, we had heavy oil, we had EOR. Now a deep water badge is attached to us. Similarly, in international, what we are looking for is acquisitions, but we are very careful that our carbon footprint has to be minimum. In any acquisition that we do bring into it consideration that what are the projects which can minimize our emissions. Dr. Rath is with me. We are doing a Mozambique project where already before commissioning, before construction starting, we are spending about $500 million on a carbon cut on Mozambique project. So that is definitely in our minds. What we also see is that as we go along, we'll have to depend on oil and gas and produce more oil and gas for the country, but we'll have to do more with less. That's our paradigm number one. Paradigm number two is we are increasingly making it more AI dependent. We are finding it that this is a gender equalizer, if I may say. If in our drilling discipline today, we find equal number of female executives coming in, because which was heavy tongs to be handled now can be done at the push of a button. So what AI is going to do is it is going to bring gender equality. Another thing that is going to do is it brings in youth as much experience as a 25-year, 30-year experience. So if we can bring these two together, we do believe smart fields will come in, and we can definitely reduce a lot of our carbon emissions. A last point that I want to make is that what India is today, that every day India, about 6.7 crore people, 67 million, go to about 90,000 retail outlet with the definitive experience that I will go there and I will get my quality of product at a sustainable and right price. So that endeavor goes on. We will go on doing this. ONGC has also made about 24 billion commitment in budget for net zero by 2038. 12 billion by 2030 and another 12 billion by 2038.
And for you saying the net zero also is about the production being net zero.
Absolutely. Scope 1, Scope 2 emissions, 2038 is our target for net zero. And we didn't just set a target, we have made a budget allocation of 24 billion. And 24 billion is again divided into 12 and 12. We have created our own ONGC green subsidiary, and we are aggressively looking at both brownfield and greenfield in India. And outside we are doing for more carbon emission cut projects as we acquire.
Right. So, and when you say outside, any particular regions in the world, are you looking at Africa more than Latin America, Middle East, Russia, or really any project?
Our focus today is Latin America and Africa more. We have our partners in Middle East, and we are working with ADNOC very seriously. We are working with SOCAR very seriously. In Latin America, we have Petrobras with us, and we are there in Colombia also. We are now the 5th largest producer in Colombia. And Venezuela, we are looking forward to things clearing up in this new regime of US. We have 2 projects there. So we had an MOU with YPF of Argentina very recently. And also, along with Oil India taking the lead, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has mandated that critical minerals should also be part of this envelope.
Right. Okay. No, that's very, very helpful. But I think this is the time to bring in Aparna, given you actually work with pretty much everyone over here, and really, as the president of Reservoir Performance at Schlumberger, I think you have the luxury of just seeing the challenges that some of the companies face, but also provide the solutions, right? Where do you see the future? I mean, we talked a little bit about just arresting decline rates and reservoir management, but also this added challenge that now it needs to be low carbon, right? That comes with an added cost. So just tell us a little bit about how you're seeing this.
No, very well, Amrita. So I think we are at a tipping point, clearly, in our industry. You have the decarbonization challenge, which is very real, and the need for affordable energy and energy security in all forms of energy. And we know that hydrocarbons will have to be clear and present for the foreseeable future. So how do we address this? I think all forms of upstream activities are going to be even more valuable. You mentioned earlier on about exploration. For example, exploration, and Sylvia and I were talking, has been very much, let's say, undervalued in the last few decades in terms of the amount of exploration, the exploration success. And why is that? Because as we step into an era of, let's say, uncertainty, there is the need to monetize quicker. And this is where technology comes in. So there is technology to obviously help unlock that exploration, but also technology in the digital sense and AI in particular that can help monetize quicker. So the speed and acceleration of not just greenfields, but as well infrastructure-led exploration is going to be of paramount importance, but as well brownfield. And when we look across the world, actually, I feel brownfield is a big opportunity for our sector, because we have been having the privilege for many decades to keep having new discoveries, having the finds, and developing more and more greenfields, and some fantastic success cases, as you mentioned, Guyana being one of them, many of the ones in Brazil, in Búzios, in Libra. Sakarya, great example of accelerated field development, where again, business model, which I want to talk about later, plays a key part in how you can unlock value quicker. So great examples of greenfields, but brownfield has been, let's say, a bit of
Forgotten
untapped,
story in
yes,
some ways, right?
untapped
Yeah.
opportunity. And while technology has evolved in the discovery and development of new fields, but the exploitation of existing fields, and this is where the brownfield story comes in, is a huge opportunity. So we see some great examples globally of customers adopting different recovery methods and recovery techniques. So recovery globally for our sector is between 35 to 45%. India is just in that average. But there are analogous reservoirs to many of the reservoirs we have here in India that are doing better, and there are many that are doing worse. So how can we be as good as the best? And what are those techniques? What are those techniques to unlock recovery? I mean, there's a good example actually here in the Northeast. I'll call out Mr. Rath, that where we have, through technology, been able to unlock bypassed reserves and very simple, I would say, detection means. But it's possible today because of the technology that exists today, which wasn't possible a decade ago. But it also requires the commercial model to unlock that type of bypass pay and perforate those zones and get that production in. So I'll stop here.
Dr. Rath, maybe this is a great time to bring you in. I mean, what a success story, right? Despite declining or assets, really, you are growing highest ever production,
Yes.
highest ever EBITDA
Yes.
margin.
Yes.
So clearly something is going well. And again, it's not just a domestic story, it's an international story. And again, this is coming at a time when I think you, and I'm going to bring Sylvia in next as well, you both are increasing CapEx. Very few companies, obviously ONGC as well, very few companies, if you look at the international portfolio, like your usual majors, your Shells, BPs, Exxons of the world, the focus has been much more cutting CapEx in oil and gas, much more in the put money in the green space, right? So just tell us a little bit about what you are seeing and what the future holds. I think that's the bigger
First of all, thank you very much for having me here, Amrita, and thanks for the gracious introduction. You have given me an opportunity to speak about the success story that we are scripting as we speak. Two of my predecessors, both MD OVL and Aparna, had put it nicely. Let me give you a context. In Oil India Limited, we realize that we are operating on a very mature field. So it's a three-pronged strategy that we have adopted. The construct called brownfield, I would bring in the construct called exploration or the near field exploration. So while we are pursuing very aggressive drilling for the purpose of enhancing our production efforts in our mining lease, we are doing a lot of near surface exploration campaigns. That is actually dipping dive and drilling more deeper wells, more proximal wells, and the bypass opportunities, missed opportunities, infill wells, the certain wells which can be converted into production now. So thanks to availability of all the service providers that they are doing so great, along with the operators, both all the three service providers and ONGC and Oil India. The story is in three verticals. Rank exploration through the open acreage licensing policy. We have about 60,000 square kilometer of area of PEL available to Oil India Limited today. Very aggressive seismic and drilling exploration efforts are undergoing. Earlier, the construct used to be a linear. First do seismic API, then come back and then do drilling and then relinquish. We have changed that strategy. We said, let's take a pause. After drilling 2 or 3 wells, establish the tie-in again, run a complementary or a supplementary seismic, and then come back and again do another stage of drilling. So by virtue of this exercise, concurrently we also run through some petroleum system modeling studies of our PELs, and great opportunity. We realized that there are blocks which should have been, or we could have, or we would have relinquished, has offered us more additional prospects to be drilled. Therefore, our rig count, the current year, that is foreseeing, will be about from 20 to 28. 2 years ago, Oil India was drilling about 35 to 38 number of wells. Last to last year, we drilled 45. Last year, we drilled 61. And if everything goes all right, it is 35% year-on-year growth as far as seismic and drilling effort is concerned. So all the three efforts, exploration and exploration and exploration, which is actually going to be the mainstay, whether it is rank exploration in OLP rounds or in the near field areas.
No,
That's the story.
It's a very, very impressive story. But I think, Sylvia, you've got the other one, given Petrobras should be bringing on 800,000 barrels per day of new FPSOs. A huge success story. And yes, last year we didn't grow production because of maintenance and so on. But talk to us a little bit about the future, like Brazil's role, right, in energy globally, really, because like I said earlier, if US production is going to start to plateau, Brazil has to really be that flag bearer of upstream production kind of going forward.
Okay, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here together with this panelist. It's my first time here in India, and it's such a beautiful country with such a millennial culture, so I'm very pleased to be here, and I hope to be able to have business here as well. Let's see. First, for the context, let's just see, Brazil is the 5th largest country in the world. We have 220 million people living there. We are the 10th, the big 10th in production, the big 10th in consumption of petroleum. Brazil, we start with the company 70 years before, now we're 71 years old, the company Petrobras. At the time, we imported 95% of our demand. We started developing onshore fields. We moved to offshore fields. Today, then we went to shallow, deep, and very deep waters. No? And we have the big discoveries first in the 70s and the 80s in the Campos Basin. And then we got self-sufficient in 2006. And then we got the big discoveries of pre-salt, which is a unique kind of reservoir, very thick reservoir, like if you remember Brazil with the sugarloaf size and huge reservoirs and big fields. And today we are producing, Petrobras, Brazil produces 4.5 million barrels a day. 4 million is operated by Petrobras, and we have 2.8 for ourselves, okay? The 1.2 is for our partners, okay? And from importer to exporter now, and Brazil now, petroleum became the first exporter products as of November. So we surpassed the agro, which is our main products. So as of November, petroleum is the main exporter in Brazil. And let me tell you, and the good thing about this, 90% of production in Brazil comes from pre-salt. And it's a very unique petroleum because in terms of emission, for 1 barrel of pre-salt is like varies from 5 to 9 kilos of CO2 per barrel. The average in the world is 17, many much more than 20. So it's a very good in terms of emission as well. But let me say about Brazil. Energy in Brazil is 50% of all energy matrix is renewable. In terms of electricity, about 89% is renewable. The last ones are mainly gas, but wind and hydro and solar, mainly hydro in Brazil. So it's the position of Brazil today is probably what many countries wants to be in 2050 when they target net zero. So we are very like a special condition in terms of emission. Just to give an idea, in terms of emission, a global emission of CO2, Brazil doing to fossil fuel is only 1%. And if you compare the entire is less than 2.4%. So we are very conscious that we are very limited the emission. And if you look in Brazil, what is the main emitters of CO2? Energy is about 20%. The world is 70%. So energy is not the main emitters of CO2 in Brazil. we have many things. It can be like very round, like this. 1/3 energy, 1/3 is agro, and 1/3 of emission is by deforestation, burning of forest. So the main villain is not petroleum. So in this very special condition, also to say that although we have all this potential, is a very rich country in resources, we still have energy poverty. If the energy per capita in Brazil is still 100th in position. So we have petroleum, we had wind, solar, hydro. So Brazil needs all kinds of energy, and they could to be added, not excluded. So in this scenario, petroleum does not play a bad role in the country. So we can produce petroleum. It's only, as I said, only 1% of the emission from oil, from fossil fuel in Brazil, and still be in a very good position worldwide. But even though we have such a good benchmark type of renewables, we are doing a lot in Petrobras and the companies. We are doing a lot of projects in decarbonization of our operations. We invest in technology to reduce emission as well. And electrification of our units, FPSOs, is taking place. We have a patent of a technology called HISEP, which a separator of CO2 sit down in the seabed. So in a couple of years, you'll be operating. And so that's the idea that reduce emission, also produce, as you separate the CO2, you re-inject in the reservoir, and what happens is that you produce more oil and emit less. So it's a very good point. Other thing is that before electrification and HISEP, EOR, enhanced oil recovery, is, as I said, 9% comes from pre-salt, and there is a lot of CO2. And today, Brazil, Petrobras, about 25% of all CO2 injected in reservoir comes from Petrobras. So we are doing a lot of EOR and injection of CO2. Another important thing that I'd like to say is we are starting, we had a very big discovery in Colombia. It's a gas field. And this is going to be a subsea to shore units. There will be no FPSOs. There was an increase, a reduction of capex, reduction of emission, and a very efficient. There will be no FPSO there. So that's some of the things that we are doing besides the electrification investment. And I'm talking only about exploration production.
No, of course.
Okay?
Yeah.
But all the biofuels come to the other presentation before. So I think that's the idea. I see no problem in production in Brazil. A lot of wind power, solar power is taking place, but petroleum continues to be there. And I always say that if you double production, we won't be 2%.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. Dr. Nag has been waiting patiently, but you know, I've finished all the good news questions, and since you are representing the government, you've got to get the harder questions over here. So we've talked a lot about the good news, right? The production growth, and these three are representing companies that are actually growing production rather than declining. I think Aparna will tell you that there are more companies probably declining production than actually growing. So from India's point of view, I think very similar to Brazil in the sense that all forms of energy are required. We are seeing a pickup in sanctions noise again, right? Iran, Russia. How are you thinking about energy security? What is the Indian government doing about ensuring energy security? And that can be oil and gas, right? It doesn't always have to be oil, and I know gas, there is definitely an aim to get from 6% to 15%. We don't necessarily have the reservoirs here, so you'll have to also look abroad. So just tell us a little bit around your thinking around that.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Aparna. It's an absolute delight and pleasure for me to be in this panel with eminent panelists seated with me, dignitaries of the dais, the captains of the industry, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I have few perspectives which I wanted to share with you at this august house. The perspectives will be from 2-3 angles. The first is, where is our country poised right now in terms of E&P? What is the exploration and production landscape currently? What is in the offing? And whither tending? That's where we are headed for. Now, you all know that oil and gas industry in the country contributes around 15% to our GDP growth. And it is one of those 8 core industries. So that means oil and gas is very, very important for a country like India, wherein our economic progress is directly linked to the energy supply. Ours is a country of around, you all know, around 140 billion people, and Indian economy currently is around, how much? Around 3 trillion economy, aspiring to become a 5 trillion economy, and then by 2030, 7 trillion economy, and by the time 2047, it will be around 50 trillion economy as per the estimates. You know, the Indian Economic Survey, which is usually published one day prior to the annual budget, and on 1st February, the Indian annual budget was presented. The Indian Economic Survey had 2-3 very important points, which I just wanted to mention. It said, till 2047, oil and gas is going to be very, very relevant for a country like India. So that means we need more oil and gas. India is a country which currently imports around 88% of crude oil and around 50% of natural gas. Now let's see where we are in the exploration field. You know, any oil, whether it is diesel or petrol, when you are filling at the petrol pump or at any outlet when you are going, has been some point of time drilled, or rather I would say explored, drilled, produced, and brought. So unless there is the first exploration, these subsequent steps cannot follow. Important thing is, science till today has not been able to find out the reactants A plus B which can give you crude oil. It is only the mother nature which is endowed with crude oil and gas. So for any country, whether it is a developed nation or whether it's a developing nation, exploration of oil and gas is very, very important. Friends, India currently has around 3.36 million square kilometer of sedimentary basin, of which only 10%, mark my words, only 10% is in active acreage. So huge potential of the E&P, the oil and gas resources is still locked up, which is yet to be discovered. We have around 25 billion tons of oil equivalent in place, which is the risked figure, and only 12 billion tons of oil and gas has been discovered. Around 13 billion tons of oil and gas is yet to be discovered. Now, yesterday, Honorable Minister launched the round 10 bid round. India had set up a target of achieving 5 lakh square kilometer of open acreage licensing area by 2025, and with this round 10, with the launch of round 10, India will be surpassing that, and we will be reaching around close to 5,70,000 square kilometer. Why I am saying these figures is, we need to explore. Unless exploration is done in our country, these things, the exploration will only lead to the monetization, and it will lead to further oil and gas production. The category 2 and category 3 basins, the Indian sedimentary basins are divided into Cat 2 and Cat 1, 2 and 3, and all know, though the primary resources is locked up in category 1 basin, there are a lot of opportunities and I would say hopes also pinned for the Indian offshore basins. So the round 10, which was launched by Honorable Minister yesterday, is primarily a mega offshore round wherein around 1,75,000 of the Indian offshore areas will be offered to the investors for oil and gas exploration. And I think I can with reasonable certainty share with you that the east coast of India has been very, very poorly explored. Only total, if you see from Bengal to Andaman, we have around 50 wells drilled during the last 4 or 5 decades. This is an abysmally very, very low. We need to intensify our exploration. So government of India has, promulgated a lot of sweeping policy reforms, and it is doing so. We need to bring in more exploration acreages in the fold. So there are certain, government-funded initiatives like National Seismic Program, the Mission Anveshan, the stratigraphic wells will be drilled in 4 offshore basins, and all those wells will be drilled in, Dr. Rath is here, ONGC and Oil India will be drilling. So we are going to see in the coming years a spurt of activities in the Indian offshore areas. So having said that, though exploration is the key element here, we also need to be very, very mindful that we need to have responsible exploration. What do we mean by responsible exploration? We mean that we need more wells, but those wells have to be tied up with the decarbonization efforts. Now, this hydrocarbon efficiency is very, very important. I was just going through a report and it said that by mitigating the methane emission, a 10% increase in production efficiency delivers a 4% reduction in emission intensity. So we need to be mindful of the decarbonization efforts. All these Indian PSUs, all these companies have also set up their internal targets of becoming net zero. Like ONGC has 2038 and Oil India has 2040. So all these companies are marching towards that. So having said that, the Indian economic progress is definitely going to happen within the 3 vertices of energy affordability, energy security, and environmental justice. So having shared my views, I would just like to close my remarks with a fact that the change is happening in the country, the policies are coming. The ORDA Act, which was passed in the Rajya Sabha, that's the upper house of the parliament, we are hopeful that it will get passed in the ensuing parliament session. And once it is done, a lot of international companies, the overseas companies, having expertise, can collaborate because it's time for collaboration. It's time for partnership. We'll see a lot of intense activities of bringing the Indian offshore basins into the fold. One last point, yes, Aparna, taking cue from your question, India has set a very ambitious target of transitioning towards a gas-based economy, 6.3 to 15%. Yes, there are challenges, but we also have the seeds of opportunities, the seeds of hope in those challenges. Because the Indian offshore areas, whether it is Andaman or whether it is Bengal or whether it is Mahanadi, from our petroleum system modeling or from whatever assessment, the technical assessments have been done, the organic matter seems to be gas prone. So we are hopeful that these will be areas for huge gas discoveries. Fingers crossed, I can only hope that they are actually brought into the fold and India marches ahead with economic and environmental justice as well.
Thank you. I think maybe Sylvia can, you were looking for opportunities in India, so there might be some stuff opening up for you. Yes.
Let's talk.
I think, look, I'm conscious of time. We've got about 10 minutes, so we really need to keep our answers brief. I think that would be the critical thing over here. Aparna, can I please ask you the challenges that you are seeing, right, in terms of decline rates, depletion rates? Is there a real risk now that we come, let's say the next 5 or 10 years, we start to plateau when it comes to production growth for oil? Now, I'm not talking about gas. I think there's a lot going on there, just because of the exploration kind of challenges that we're facing. And then I think I'd love to bring in ONGC and Oil India as well.
No, but Amrita, I'll pitch in here. Aparna, do you see a challenge working with ONGC and Oil India, or you're having a great time?
Put her on the spot, come on.
Thank you. I really appreciate that question. I will deflect it. But no, first let me say that there are challenges, but I also see huge opportunities. And since this is the resilience stage, maybe we start with what is going to make the sector resilient, since we have established very well about the need for hydrocarbons. Now, digital, we're just sort of unlocking that in our sector, plays a huge opportunity. It plays an opportunity in the discovery and the exploration side, but it also plays an opportunity on the production. And I can say from our own internal journey of extracting efficiencies ourselves as a technology provider in this space, and also working with customers globally, we can say that initially it was. And we have a nomenclature that we've introduced to the sector about being connected, intelligent, and autonomous, and I just take a minute to explain that. And the first step is to be connected. And a lot of the time, we get caught up in this, in digital, especially on this, let's see the value, is it valuable or not, or where's the business case? And from my own experience, I can say the first step is to be connected. Let the data flow, let's get it into the right platforms, let's organize the data, and we did that internally as well. We have something called our Performance Life Centers, which is how we deploy global operations. We have 4 global Performance Life Centers. One of them is here in India, in Pune. And we launched this almost a decade ago. And the first step was, let's just connect. We don't know what the value is. The second step, very quickly, was once we connect and we put smart people behind screens and looking at all of this data, you start to make algorithms, you start to make deductions, you start to make interpretation. And of course, in the last few years, with the advent of machine learning algorithms, that has really taken on a completely new space. So we are now able to have advisory capabilities for ourselves, for our customers, and very good example here in India with ONGC of actually having all of the data being streamed in. And a very quick use case that was shared earlier this week was that just by looking at their data, we were able to find an opportunity where, for example, gas lift optimization, where you could optimize your gas lift, reduce the amount of gas being consumed while improving recovery. Sylvia mentioned a little bit, and I'm sure she'll want to talk about high SEP and CO2 injection and improving recovery factors. But digital is a key enabler in how to understand the reservoir and understand what's going on, get the data, get the intelligence back in at the fingertips of the experts, and these are the advisory capabilities that it brings. So it's connected first, then it becomes intelligent, and the ultimate holy grail is autonomous, because once it's intelligent, we want things to run autonomously. If we can have the best wells drilled every time, then this whole concept of top quartile, bottom quartile, the standard deviation sort of collapses, right? Yeah. If we can always have the best production, and it's not a pipe dream, because we are here already today. We have, with Petrobras, actually, we have, and partners, Equinor in Brazil, we've drilled our first autonomous well. We've drilled autonomously in Norway. And not only is the savings, and this is deep water, we're talking about deep water wells, completely with no human intervention. And it's not just 20–30% lower cost of the operation, but those wells are best placed, they are perfectly in the reservoir, they have a more streamlined trajectory, there are so many other benefits. So imagine you can deliver that on every well, and you can today, right? So there's a lot of still untapped potential for our sector to be more resilient. But your question on recovery, it's a wide range, but there are technologies out there. EOR, for example, is still an untapped opportunity in our sector. There are examples here in India, on polymer flood, on CO2, and maybe some policy in the making on incentivizing recovery. But there is a huge opportunity on recovery. For us in SLB, we participate in almost 1.5 million barrels of production enhancement projects, 230 or 250,000 barrels in Ecuador, which we manage directly, and about 1.1 million barrels that we manage through our services of production enhancement. And we can see from those activities that extracting a barrel more, or extracting more from an existing reservoir comes with 30% less cost and 30% less carbon. So while, of course, brownfields have a higher carbon intensity than greenfields, but extracting more from an existing brownfield gives us so much benefit. So there are technologies on coal tubing drilling, there are technologies on EOR, chemical EOR, CO2 EOR, and with digital and surveillance technologies that still can do so much. So while yes, there's a concern and exploration must continue, absolutely, there's a lot more we can do on recovery.
So let me ask both ONGC and Oil India over here. I mean, digital is obviously one key thing, but given the growth story that you both have talked about, do you actually see, let's say, 10 years' time, 15 years' time, the whole landscape shifting where it's developing nations' oil and gas companies now really being the top versus, we've always had like the Western, kind of the Exxons and the Chevrons of the world kind of leading exploration. Can you see that shift coming, in part because probably of the ESG pressures the West faces, which the East isn't facing?
I'll go first.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So answer this query of yours, fantastic, and taking a cue from Aparna, what I would like to say or assure that while India will now become the hub of exploration, it will be the bright spot of hydrocarbon. That's a given the market size that we offer, but with the kind of aggressive promotion that is happening in terms of OLP 9 just concluded, OLP 9 just launched, we foresee multiple tier activities and collaborations. And let me share, yesterday Petrobras and Oil India Limited have jointly signed an MOU to explore possibility of enhancing exploration efforts in the country. Exploration will continue and in deep and ultra deep waters. Going forward, one more thing, both the national oil companies with the support of the services industry, we are also going to be the solution provider to the world. Why I am saying this? A, we are anyway going to get into the digital era of digital well, digital exploration and all that. That's fine. But please understand, it is the national oil companies which understand the subsurface better than anybody else. That gives us an opportunity for the decanted pore spaces to be the storehouse of geological sequestration of carbon dioxide. And that's what we understand. While we will have very minimal impact than our sister industries in terms of CO2 emission, it is the oil and gas companies going forward will provide opportunities for CO2 sequestration, more so in their depleted fields, and I would say not so successful exploration wells, because we don't believe in failure. So we understand, and that for that matter, a lot of study is being undertaken by Oil India Limited and ONGC, of course, in terms of enhanced oil recovery. That gives a delta sequestration opportunity. But pure sequestration or geological sequestration or a permanent sequestration studies are currently underway, and that's what going to be the explorationist approach.
No, thank you. Mr. Gupta, I think you're going to get the final word over here. We've got 2 minutes.
You talk of challenges. Yes, there are challenges. Let us not say there are not. We have to be more cost efficient. We have to be more energy efficient. We have to ensure that our mature fields, we can increase our recoveries. And ONGC drills about 500 wells, 100 exploration and 400 development wells. But the point at this point is, the question is not the international oil companies or will be better off in 10 years. I believe the era is of partnerships and collaborations. We have to reduce risk. Our exploration has to be much more accurate. I do believe that the processing time for a seismic is now reducing from months to days. So it has to be much more cognitive decisions wherein we do the right thing in the first time right, if I may say so. And so what we see in 10 years' time is India being a hub of exploration, development, EOR. We have many EOR luminaries here. Mr. Rajarshi is sitting here. We have been doing this for 30 years. And so EOR is another. We are doing low salinity water flooding. So there is a market in India. The exploration side is opening up. We are ready to, with our capex, we have the experience of 70, 75 years. We want partnerships from international companies like Petrobras, from NOCs, from all over the world, and the oil field services, that this ecosystem has to work together, and then only we can ensure that the common man gets the energy in a sustainable and the right price.
No, very well said. And unfortunately, we have run out of time now. We could have gone on forever, really. I think, Sylvia, all I will tell you from all the conversation we've had is that this is an invitation with open arms for Petrobras to come and, do some drilling and operate in India alongside all the projects that they're doing.
We hope you can do a lot of things here. We are looking at look forward to look at the data. As I said, Petrobras is 95% offshore company. The results come. We love deep waters, so I think we can go deep with you. Let's see.
Absolutely. So on that note, please join me in thanking the panelists. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time.